Everyone be very quiet, Jessica whispered. The children just stared at her, their eyes wide and solemn. They stood together in the back corner of the small, dank room, awaiting their instructions. 3-year-old Lisa was still huddled behind Ron, her chosen protector, and Alana had taken hold of the little blond boy's hand, though he was wriggling in her grasp. Jessica swallowed. Why do I have to be the leader? It's bad enough when I'm just in charge of myself. She bent down to the children's level, trying to summon some kind of leadership quality. Should have listened to mom, should have played a team sport, but no. I had to be the choir girl in the corner chewing the eraser off her pencil. Jessica steadied the door again, then took a more serious tone. Is there something out there? Alana and Ron exchanged a worried glance. What's outside? You can tell me, Jessica pleaded. It comes in through the door, Alana said, not meeting Jessica's eyes. The little girl broke off and covered her face, mumbling something intelligible behind the mask of her hands. She, who the woman took you? Jessica asked gently, trying to contain her impatience. Alana shook her head vigorously, her face still hidden. We thought it was a toy. It wasn't scary like everything else. Ron searched for words, and Elisa tugged at his t-shirt and whispered something, too quietly for Jessica to make out. Ron nudged her. Tell her. Lisa looked up at Jessica with a suspicious expression on her gubby toddler's face. She's all mangled up, the girl said, then turned away again, hiding her face in Ron's shirt. She gave Jessica a distressed look. Who? Who's all mangled up? Jessica said slowly, searching in her mind for what they might be talking about. Was something broken? Did you break one of them? She asked hopefully. The little kids all began to sniffle again, and she ground her teeth. What is it? Jessica nearly snapped, but none of them seemed to notice her tone. It's not broken, Ron said, his voice rising in panic, and then the floor shook with a resounding thud. Alana grabbed Jessica around the waist, and Ron huddled closer, pulling Lisa with him. The little blond boy stared where he was, frozen in place with a look of terror. There was another thud, this time louder. Then the pounding continued over and over, coming closer. Jessica could hear it moving in the hall, reverberating deep in her chest as whoever it has come thundering toward the door outside. She heard water cracking and clutched the children's shoulders as something struck the wall 3 times in quick succession, knocking them all back. There was a final clattering noise that seemed to come from all around. What is that? Jessica whispered, searching the walls and ceiling, unable to make sense of the noises. Then everything fell silent. They waited. Jessica listened, counting to 10, then 20, and the sound did not come again. She counted to 30, then 60. I have to do something. She strained, carefully extracting herself from Alana's grasp. Wait here, she whispered. She crept toward the door, sobbing as softly as she could. As she moved, she could feel her eyes on her. The door was ordinary looking, a wooden door with a brass knob, the kind you see on a closet. Jessica took a quick, deep breath, then stretched out her arm to take the knob. Before she could touch it, the knob turned, and the door began to slide open. Jessica held her breath and took steady steps back, desperately wanting to rejoin the group, even if they were just children. At first, Jessica only saw pink and white, the shapes indistinct. Then her mind made sense of it. Slowly, the enormous head of a garnishly painted fox peered into the room. Foxy? Jessica thought, easily taking in pointed pink ears and yellow eyes. Its cheeks were painted with red circles, like the animatronic girls had been. The creature looked at her for a long moment, and she stared back, unable to remember how to move her feet. And then the fox had retreated, and all the children screamed. Something new sprang violently into the room, a long and segmented metal limb like a spider's leg. It braced against the floor just as the second metal leg violently invaded the space, embedded itself in the nearest wall. The children screamed and Jessica ran towards them, looking frantically for a way out. The room was filling out with arms and legs, extended and contorted, some with hands, others without. Jessica searched for a place to run through the steady, thickening mass of legs. Her eyes met the yellow eyes of the foxhead, now suspended on the air by rods and beams. But there was another set of eyes as well. Does it have two heads? The unskinned metal skull lowered itself. It was connected to the mass above by cables and cords, seemed to move all of its own. One high-pitched scream rose above the others, a blood-curdling wail. Lisa! Ron cried, and Jessica saw the thing that one hand on the little girl's arm and was pulling her toward it. The skinless metal hand studied her, then swiveled and swung its cables to the others, taking an aggressive stance toward them as the metal limbs entangled the little girl and pulled her toward the door. No! Jessica cried, climbing through the snares of metal coils and grabbing Lisa's tiny hand. A violent surge through her back, but she fell fast to whatever she had managed to grasp, letting go only as she hit the floor. She struggled for air as she got to her feet, but the creature had already retreated through the doorway and disappeared. Jessica whirled, looking frantically to the children, and her heart nearly burst with relief. Lisa was on the ground beside her, and Ron and Elena were helping her up. Jessica rushed to them. It's okay, she whispered. Then the momentary relief vanished. The blonde boy who might have been Jacob was gone. I couldn't hold on to him, Alana wailed, as if reading Jessica's mind. Jessica looked to the door in despair, but quickly steadied herself. We'll get him back, Jessica said, because it was all she could think of to say. She glanced around helplessly, then froze as the doorknob slowly began to turn again. Stay here, Jessica said in a low voice, and she moved quickly to the door. She stood to the side, bracing herself to jump on whatever came through. This is your plan? The door opened, and Jessica screamed and lunged into the doorway as though ready to karate chop whatever was coming through. Carlton and Marla jumped back with startled expressions, and Jessica stared for a moment, then seized Carlton in a hug, holding tight at his shoulders as if he could stop her from shaking. Jessica? Marla said. Spying the children, Jessica pushed Carlton away. Something got one of the kids, a little boy, she said in a rush. I didn't see where it went. Marla was already beside the children, checking them for injury. We have to get them out, she said. Oh, really, Marla? Is that what we should be doing? Here I was painting my nails, Jessica said crisply. Carlton, reached for his ear and pulled something out. Here, take this, he said. What? You. Jessica made a few indistinctly, then peered at the tiny device. Is that a hearing aid? Not exactly. It makes you invisible to the animatronics. You and Marla take these kids out. I'll find the other kid they took. How does it? Jessica took the device and studied it. I have to put it in my ear? Yes. You have to put it in your ear. I'll explain later. But are your ears even clean? She leaned in, peering suspiciously at Carlton's ear. Marla grabbed the earpiece out of her hand and shoved it into Jessica's ear. Ow! Jessica cried. Marla turned back to the kids. Shouldn't we give them to the children instead? There are only two separate earpieces, and you can both protect them better if you're invisible, right? Carlton said irritably. What if Jess and I sit here with the kids and you take one out at a time wearing the earpieces? Marla pressed. Jessica shook her head immediately. And what if that thing comes back and kills us all while we're waiting for Carlton to take his sweet time? We have to make a break for it, Marla. It's the only way. They're all quiet for a moment. Carlton looked from Jessica to Marla and back. Right. Now give me 30 seconds to get away from here. That way, if something chases me, I can draw them away from you. Anything I should know? Carlton paused at the door. Afton's still alive, Jessica said, and he nodded. This ends today, he said quietly. One way or another. Not one more child dies because of that psychopath. I owe that much to Michael. Jessica bit her lip. We all do, she said. He forced a smile. Good luck. Good luck, she echoed. Right. Carlton clenched his jaw, then squared his shoulders and held the door open, poised to exit. This is my idea, he muttered, then closed the door behind him. Marla, do you know the way out? Jessica asked, surprised to hear her own voice come out clear and steady. Marla nodded, standing up. We came in the way back, but I think if we go back down the hall, we can get into the main dining room. Should be easy to get out of here, right? You think so? Jessica muttered with an edge. Marla gave her a level look. You got something better? No, I don't. Jessica turned to the three remaining children who were watching them with wide eyes. We don't have to get far, she said, searching for scraps to offer them. I need you to stay together and stay with me and Marla. If you can do that, we'll all be okay. They looked at her like they knew she was lying, but no one said a word. Jessica opened the door again carefully. The hallway outside the little room was dark, but Marla led them onward as if she already did know where they were headed. She held a large battered flashlight out in front of her. She looked poised to turn it on, but refrained from doing so, seemingly afraid of attracting more unwanted attention. Jessica's eyes adjusted to the dim light as she took up the rear alert to the slightest sign of danger. They came to a T in the hall, and Marla turned without hesitation. A few yards ahead, there was a light. Strings of small bare bulbs led to the way at the intervals, and the next fork in the hall was visible. We're getting closer, Jessica thought, as they moved cautiously onward. A soft popping noise caught Jessica's attention overhead, and she froze. Marla, she hissed, and Marla and the children ahead stopped and turned around. Marla pointed up with a worried expression, and Jessica looked up to see what some of the bulbs over her had gone out. Their glass made a pocket with a sooty film. Just old lights. Jessica breathed. A light above Marla burst and died, and all of them jumped. Alana clamped both hands over her mouth, and Ron put a hand on Lisa's shoulder. Can we go faster? Lisa whispered. All at once, the rest of the light bulbs flickered and clattered. Jessica held her breath. They stayed on, preserving the little light, but overhead, something hollow and metallic rattled in the ceiling. Marla's face went pale. Keep moving, she said tightly. Jessica gave a sharp nod. The rattling noise kept pace, sometimes seeming to come from above them, and sometimes from the dark corners just out of view, scraping and clambering in a vent or crawl space. Jessica whimpered. The older children's faces were stony, but Jessica could see the glimmer of tears in their cheeks. Suddenly, Marla stopped short, and Jessica almost stopped into Ron. What? She hissed, then saw a thin current of dust was falling from above. Jessica looked up and saw the open dock directly above them. A mesomelated metal arm covered with springs and wires dropped down through the open duct and anchored itself to the floor right next to Jessica's foot. Everyone screamed. The arm retracted. Then two more of the creature's contorted limbs smashed down to the ground, raining down plaster and dust. Run, Mother screamed. They took off down the hallway as the creature lowered its full form into the space, its shiny white fox head turning and smiling into their direction as they fled. Jessica glanced back, and the unskinned head dropped too, grinning upside down, a red bow tie joining their necks ridiculously. Jessica fled. Behind her came an enormous stud. Run faster. She wanted to scream, but the others were gasping for breath, already running at their full capacity. The children were pounding along as fast as they could, but Lisa, the smallest, began to fall behind. The creature shot past Jessica, reaching out for the little girl again, and Jessica grabbed her, yanking her up and out of reach just in time. It reared back to strike again, and Jessica clutched Lisa to her chest and ran on. They rounded a corner, and with a flare of hope, Jessica saw the hall was short, ending in a heavy set of double doors. Marla sped up, and Alana and Ron did the same. Jessica kept her pace, staying in the back as Jessica clung to her with startling strength. Marla raced to the end of the hall and slammed herself against the emergency bar, and the door split open. They raced through, and Marla flung the door shut, grabbing a nearby signpost and jamming it through the door handles. Keep running, Jessica said with a fresh pump of adrenaline. She looked around. They were up against the wall, behind a popcorn popper and a candy machine. She glanced back briefly at the sign Marla had barred the door with "Let's Eat." It's read in big round letters. Ron leaned down to the side, about to peek between the machines. Hold on, she hissed, putting a hand on his shoulder. He drew back as if something had burned him. It'll be okay, Marla said, and Jessica marveled briefly that she sounded like she believed that she was saying behind them. Something crashed against the door again, rattling the door frame. Jessica waited, her eyes on the makeshift barricade, but nothing came. We have to move slowly and quietly, she whispered, and the three children nodded in unison. Step back, Jessica told them, and stepped past the popcorn machine, alert to danger. She took a second to get her bearings. The wall of the dining room were lined with arcade games and children's play arenas, and on the far side of the room, blissfully, were the wide glass doors of the entrance. She motioned the others forward. The children huddled together, followed her into the open room with Marla close behind. Hurry, she urged, and Marla nodded. Taking Lisa's hand, and Alana and Ron followed behind her, their faces pinched with exhaustion. Suddenly, Alana screamed and Jessica jumped. What? What is it? The girl was pointing at a jungle gym a few feet away. Her two toddlers, too small to climb the bars, were nothing less doing so. It's okay, they're just toys, Marla said, looking back at Jessica with a frazzled expression. We saw them on the way in. Alana screamed again and ran to Jessica, gripping onto her waist. It bit me. What? Jessica looked down. Alana's ankle was bleeding, although not badly, and a few feet away was another crawling, robotic child. Jessica, Marlowe screamed, touching the device in her ear nervously. It can't see us, but it can see them. And she spoke. The two other robotic children on the monkey bars lowered themselves unsteadily to the ground and began to crawl straight toward Lisa and Ron. They backed away, and Fourth appeared, boxing them in. Marla scooped up Lisa and Alana and tried to hold them away from harm. Jessica, Marla screamed, help! It bit me, Alana repeated, panic in her voice, and the children clung together as the crawlers came closer, a slow march of determined toddlers with the black eyes of insects. They can't see us, Jessica said with determination, darting forward and grabbing the nearest robot baby. It was heavier than it looked. Jessica held it out from her body. It was freezing away from her, and she held on tight as it continued its crawling movements in the air, steadily putting its hands and feet into position. One after the other, she glanced around, then spotted the ball pit, at least 4 or 5 feet deep. Jessica drew the crawler down onto the cove of balls as hard as she could, and it landed, half buried on its side, still repeating its motions, and slowly sank out of sight. Marla, come on, she shouted. Marla set down Lisa and Alana beside Ron. Diana turned her attention to the baby crawling toward them. Her hands were shaking like she was preparing to pick up a giant cockroach. Marla, Jessica shrieked. Marla screamed and shook her hands in the air, and the baby suddenly charged forward, clawing at the ground and biting at the children's feet. Lisa cried and fell to the ground, and the heavy creature grabbed at her legs as it crawled on top of her. Marla bolted forward with a blood-curdling scream and yanked the metal crawler off the little girl. Marla cried out again as she spun and threw the creature through the air. It missed Jessica's head by an inch, slammed into the net canopy above the ball pit, and dropped into it, sinking out of sight. You almost hit me, Jessica had barely spoken the words when the third and final robot baby flew through the air and landed at her feet with a resounding bang. Marla let herself fall to the ground, breathing heavily, her eyes wide with panicked fury.